Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever you guys are watching this video. Glad to be with you today on
Guten Morgen.
our Behind the Pulpit. My German co-host is with me today. Guten Tag.
Nein!
All right. Well, Bob is ready with
Yes.
the intertextual, interlingual dialogue that's going on here. So, welcome, Bob. How are you doing on this fine Monday afternoon?
I am doing well. I am doing very good, Pastor Dave. Thank you for asking me. I'm enjoying my seat over here and ready to go for Behind the Pulpit today.
Did you take German in high school, or was that just like a little...
No, actually,
Back of your brain.
that's a wonderful question. No, I took French in middle school and high school. However, I was part of a program that I tested into in elementary school, and I did take a little bit of German back then, which would be, I know how to say Guten Morgen, Guten Tag, and some of those other things that are very simple.
I only remember one thing to say in German, which is, can I use the restroom?
How do you say that in German?
Darf ich bitte auf die Toilette gehen?
I would say
That's all I
German. That's not
remember.
to offend all our German people out there. I have German heritage, but German is a very angry language. It always feels like you should be yelling when you say it. Guten Morgen! Yes.
I'm German too, so that doesn't offend me. We're
There you
serious
go.
people, probably too serious.
Well, the real Germans out there, they might be offended and they're clicking off right now to some other podcast.
Who are these people? Get to the point.
On
We have-
Reformation Week, too.
That's right. Martin Luther, German. We have viewers from all over the world. Tim, where our viewers are coming from many places. right?
Many places. I don't
So
have
you
it in
never
front
know.
of me. I recently we've been seeing some action from Russia. We've been having some action from Switzerland,
My goodness.
South Korea, England, Spain, Germany.
Oh, so we do have some real German
have some
viewers
actual
out there.
German
Pastor
viewers
Dave.
out
See?
there.
Don't hate on the Germans.
We are celebrating Reformation Week, which Martin Luther was a big part of that.
He was.
The castle door at Wittenberg, Germany, was where he posted his 95 Theses. Not in German, by the way. He posted them in Latin.
We should have nailed 95 Theses behind us.
Darn it.
In a
That would have been awesome.
Noah, can you go get us a nail and a paper and we'll nail something?
Let's not ruin the set.
And that was
All right.
like the church bulletin board. That was where they were like communicating. That was like the Facebook wall. And he was saying, "Hey,
that was the original social media post back in the day.
That was a heck of a post." And he was challenging the leaders of the church for a debate. I'm not too sure he wanted to overthrow the entire church. He wanted to reform the church.
Yeah.
They weren't really up for that. Anyway, so it's Reformation Week, October 31st. Also, some people may be celebrating a different holiday on that day. But it's an important week in the month of October for us Christians. This is kind of where our church history flows back to. A lot going on. We had a wonderful event this Saturday, Trunk or Treat, when we had, dare I say, hundreds of kids flowing through the church campus.
I think
on Saturday.
you dare say there were many kids out there, and I know my kids got some candy, and they didn't go to sleep that night. So that was a wonderful event. Still,
I saw there was an Urbig trunk.
we did. Now it was a windy trunk or treat this year, and I was a bit concerned my trunk decorations were going to blow away into our neighbor's face, but we managed to hold them down. But it was quite windy.
Very good. Well, we are so excited about our show today. We got a lot planned for you. We, of course, are going to talk a little bit about dragons and beasts and talk about what's going on with our chart sightings, book recommendations. But as always, we like to get started with a little something that we call In the News. So there's a lot going on in the news this week, and I wanted to start a lighthearted way, okay? I know you have a serious story, but this weekend...
I'll keep my serious face on over here while you do the lighthearted
Okay,
one.
the lighthearted one.
But you have to smile, though.
Okay.
Big smile.
The lighthearted one is German people don't smile. That's the thing. So the lighthearted one is Dwayne Wade's statue was unveiled this weekend, and it doesn't look like Dwayne Wade at all. So this is now
Do we have a picture? Did you guys download
this has
the picture?
generated a lot of memes, and it's kind of a little bit of a internet sensation going on. It's going viral, and there's a lot of people making fun of the fact that this Dwayne Wade statue just doesn't look like Dwayne Wade. So that's what's going on.
It's true. It does look like he's crying.
In the basketball news there, man.
He's angry, he's crying, he's something in
It's
this
an odd
video.
looking statue.
By the way, are we
there.
assuming people know who Dwayne Wade is? Should we give a little background?
Well,
He's a basketball player, in case you were wondering.
So
If you don't know who he is.
he was a point guard. He played on the Miami Heat, and he was a very successful NBA superstar. And this particular artist, I don't know, man.
Took
I don't know
liberty.
what's going on, but that's an interesting. We'll see how many memes get created from the Dwayne Wade statue. So that's my funny story in the news. Other athletic news going on. The Cowboys lost again. They now have a losing record this year.
The Yankees also are down 2-0 in the World Series.
The Yankees are not looking good.
It's, my wife is happy this week, but it's not a good day in New York.
That's why they play 7.
Well, Friday night
You gotta come back.
was kind of a nail biter, like extra innings, and the Dodgers had this opportunity there, I think in the 10th inning, and they took full advantage of winning that game. And it seemed like a mirror image of that opportunity at the Yankees game Saturday night, but the Yankees did not.
It was real close.
Return the gesture. So,
well, they're going home, right? They're going to the
Bombers
Bronx, so they can
home.
sweep at home, and then they'll be up 3-2 when they go back to LA next
I will
weekend.
I will actually be in attendance tomorrow night.
Oh my
I
God.
You
can-
will. How did you wrangle that up, Tim?
Tim
Ukes, I'm very
representing.
You have some connections we need to know about?
My connection is my father-in-law. He was able to acquire tickets.
Okay.
So
All
I will
right.
be there. So next week I'll be able to report on the misery and suffering, or maybe the jubilation of a Yankees win.
Okay. Well, tell us about that.
That'll be in the news next week. So stay tuned.
There you go. All right. Well, a more serious news story. So this is actually becoming a phenomenon right now, and I wanted to do this one last week, and I
Staying on the sports
I
theme.
could not think of it. It was really bothering me all week, and finally I found the article that I was thinking about. So here's the gist of it. There is the transgender conversation has become a big cultural issue, and I will say, there's people that legitimately wrestle with gender dysphoria, but it's been a big deal in women's sports. So here's one of the headlines: another girls' soccer team refuses to play against team with trans-identifying male. So this is it says these brave athletes in Concord, New Hampshire, boycotted a game with a male player on the opposing team, saying no to unfair competition. So that's a local one, and then. San Jose State University has been at the center of, at the collegiate level, a lot of teams are refusing to play their volleyball team, their girls' volleyball team, because they have a transgender player on there. And you know what? I would just say this is a major issue. And I got a couple daughters. They're citing issues of safety, that you have larger, a biological male playing on a women's team in close contact sports could actually cause injuries. And so I think good for these teams for standing up for this. This is a major cultural conversation that needs to be had. But this is now kind of sweeping across. It's not just these two teams. There's a lot of teams that are saying we're not going to play these games, and are forcing some serious conversation about these issues. So that's going on in the news, Pastor Dave.
Isn't that what it's going to take?
I think so.
Aren't women going to have to just say we're not playing? I don't know how else this is going to end.
I don't know. What the thing is, like, we want to talk about women's rights and everything, but this right here is a direct. This affects women way more than it does men.
Right.
So if you're going to stand up for women, I think this is one of the things you got to speak up about.
I think that's great. That's a good news story.
So that is a good news story.
Good.
So check that out. Say something.
Very good.
Also, Pastor Dave, there's an election coming up, so we just want to remind people to go and vote.
You can vote early.
You can vote. Actually, I was considering voting early this week over here in Berners Township. I might be making my way over there earlier. We'll see.
Might as well get it done.
By the way, just a reminder, if you're watching this on our email, there is links below this video, like down here, to papers that the elders put together, resources, Underground Sessions podcast. Check out that one with Katie Faust. Those came out recently, and that will hopefully help you as you think through the election.
Awesome.
And we'll see what happens next Wednesday, Pastor Dave.
Next Tuesday?
Well,
oh, you mean we find out on Wednesday?
Well, we'll see. I think people are already assuming it's not going to be decided on Tuesday, which is unfortunate. But we'll see. It's a nail biter, so it is important that you get out there.
Pull an all-nighter Tuesday night?
Probably not an all-nighter.
Should we do
like a
Behind the
regular thing
Pulpit
in your
on
house.
Wednesday next week?
If you want the kids
We
to
can
like
discuss
act
this
up
later,
and not
but-
sleep, tell them Tuesday night would be a good night for them to do that.
Behind the Pulpit Tuesday live Tuesday morning at 7 a.m.
No. Not a live one. That would be kind of fun, though. But I'm saying, do we want... I don't know. This can be something we talk about not on the air. But
Don't get people's hopes up, Tim, before we've talked about these
we come
things.
out with a Wednesday reaction of the election. No, what do you think, man?
That could be pretty viral.
It could be. All right, we'll talk about it later.
Well, we'll see. I'll leave it up to Dave.
I might cut this part out.
Hey, thank you for those in the news stories. And now we have come to the Great Book War segment. And
Moving on.
Just for the record, Bob's getting a little lax with the rules. I believe that we talked about one book per week. I believe that was the rule. And then you said on our way to the podcast studio, hey, bring a book. And then I noticed you brought not just one, but two books also.
Well, just the reserves. Actually, I think what we should start doing here is
There's no reserves. That's not a rule.
Somebody
There's
can recommend a book.
Not even a segment.
I'm going to suggest somebody can recommend a book, and then we can have Tim and Noah vote on whether they'd like to see a second book or if the first book was satisfactory to them.
All right. So you
This
need
is a lot of power.
to gang up
It's
on
like the
me.
American Idol of books.
I'm starting. Okay, so this week we're going to do Daniel Hummel's book. Let's see if I can get that in focus. It's called The Rise and Fall of Dispensationalism. He's kind of taken that title from another few different podcasts and stuff like that, like The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. And so he's got
Yeah.
this sort of catchy title, and the subtitle is How the Evangelical Battle Over the End Times Shaped a Nation. Forward is by Dr. Mark Knoll, who is a well-known...
What's on the cover? What is the picture?
It is some sort of dystopian,
It does.
eschatological city that looks like it's kind of on fire, and
Okay.
like the moon is turning to blood and the sun's red.
Right.
And all
Is
that.
there any red heifers in there too? Or
There's plenty of heifers in the book.
So, heifers are back.
Daniel Hummel is a historian himself. He teaches at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and this is a study about dispensationalism. I read it. I thought it was very profitable. I think he's charitable towards the movement, but he's also very knowledgeable. His dad was either a missionary or a pastor who held this view, so he kind of was brought up in this view. And he wanted to know like how it started and how it's going. That's a meme, right? How it started, how's it going? So Hummel, I think, does a brilliant job explaining the movement from the beginnings, from the Derby days in Ireland and England. There was a port in Plymouth where this group of brethren met. They didn't want to call themselves Christians, but they were the Plymouth Brethren who started this new system called dispensationalism. It actually wasn't called dispensationalism until later, but and he takes us through the history of it and how things kind of picked up steam with D.L. Moody and the Schofield Bible, and then a bunch of other Bible colleges got founded, like Moody Bible Institute, Biola, Philadelphia College of Bible, Dallas Seminary, and how it really reached its heyday in the 1950s and 1960s. But interestingly, he has like a downward trend in terms of academic popularity and an upward trend in terms of pop culture. And they're not going the same direction. So the academy has been plummeting, which is what he would call the fall of dispensationalism, since the 70s. And then the pop culture understanding of dispensationalism and the popularity of dispensationalism has been exploding since that time, and the Left Behind series was probably the zenith of popularity of that view.
well, and the book you referenced, what's the Late Great Planet Earth?
Yeah.
Hal Lindsey.
Yeah,
Right? That was in the 70s.
In the 70s.
So you had all these popular level books that were
Right.
Yeah.
Which spawned a few like B-rate movies.
yes.
Thief in the Night
That's very
was a
charitable.
well-known one. It was like a very low-budget film about the rapture. And so So dispensationalism, if you really want to know the movement that's probably popular around you, if it's not your own view, that book will really help you sort of understand the movement, and it's a page turner. He's really good. So there's my book recommendation.
Boom, there you go.
And would you like to?
Well, it's
add
up to them. Would you
to
guys
the
like to?
pile?
Are you satisfied, or would you like to hear another book?
We got a consultation.
I don't know.
It's okay if we just want one. I'm
feel like-
leaving options here.
Pastor Dave, how digestible would you say that book is?
Can you eat that book?
You know, we actually forgot to mention the Eat That Book stuff. So Bob and I were actually at a
It's avoiding the
Didasco
question.
seminar this week, and Didasco is a ministry where they bring out 40 pastors.
Okay, you just used a Greek word. We have to define it. What does
It means
didasco
teaching,
mean? Thank
teaching.
you. There you go. In the
And they
Greek.
bring out a professor and a scholar, and they help us understand a book of the Bible and form a sermon series. So Bob and I were spending the week with Tim Mackey, Dr. Tim Mackey from the Bible Project, who has a special channel, I think, called Eat That Book.
Oh, is that
and-
what it's called? Okay.
Yeah.
There
So
you go.
that was a lot of fun. We had a really good time hanging
It's
out
a
with
play
Tim
off a
Mackey.
Eugene Peterson book as well. He's got a book called Eat That Book.
Which is a play off the prophet Ezekiel.
There you
who
go. So
Told,
it all goes back to
who was
Ezekiel.
told to eat the scroll. So, hey, great week together studying Isaiah.
It was.
Are you
And
getting fired up about
I
Isaiah?
am. There may or may not be an Isaiah series coming your way in the near, not too distant
Uh-oh.
future.
Spoilers. Noah and I
It was-
have decided that Pastor Bob is allowed to recommend a book.
I am allowed. Okay,
You are allowed.
mine
I
is
feel
not.
so betrayed by both of you right now. Just let the record show.
Okay, so
I know whose side you're on, guys. I see how this goes.
So my book is not as exciting, and I won't take as long. I'm just going to recommend this book that I recently picked up called Daily Doctrine. And notice the difference in covers, the simplicity right here. It just says Daily Doctrine. So this is actually it's by Kevin DeYoung, and it's a daily devotional book that walks you through systematic theology. So again, like I said, not as exciting as Dave's book, but these are little bite-sized chunks where if you want to know about some of the key doctrines of the Christian faith and you want to do that in your devotional life, I found this book to be quite profitable. And it's very, even though there's not a lot of excitement on the cover, it feels just, Pastor Dave, feel that book. Just what's your initial reaction? How does it feel?
It's nice.
Underplaying it. All right. So there you go. Daily Doctrine. Pick it up. Kevin DeYoung.
Okay. Tim and Noah, was that really worth it?
Yeah, I just put it in my Amazon cart.
There you go. Not Dave's book. You put my book in there.
All right.
I can put both in.
Cha-ching! Hey, you put my book in first.
Free returns.
Yes.
I can put
Take
both in.
that.
I spent
Woo!
so much time on my book part.
It's just
All
That book,
Bob has to
That
do-
book is good though. I've read
Bob
that one.
holds up
Yeah.
the most boring looking square you've ever
feel-
seen in your life.
I feel like it's just the one that applies to my current Christian walk the most right now.
It is called the Book War, right?
It
Someone
is.
has to
This is a
win,
book
someone has
war.
to lose.
Yeah, so-
Boom! There's your JPEG right there.
no,
Do
there's
these two.
no participation trophies here, Pastor Dave.
All right.
I'm speechless.
Back to Dave.
All right, next week Noah gets to put one in his Amazon cart.
We should, there is bits where they do that, where they go up there and they ask, and you have to get people to agree with you. Like have you seen in Practical Jokers, they do that, they go up to people.
Yes.
And the goal of the game is to get people to agree with you over the
I
other
think it's a
person.
fun
Yeah.
addition to the segment where if we
It could. It could get less That's right. It could
you
really be
you
a
have
war,
to convince Noah and I
We
to
each
want to
bring a
buy the book.
and
look-
there you go.
It's more.
Boom.
It's being morphed in front of our very eyes. You the listener, and the viewer are. I hope you feel a part of
War was
this.
so hot. I'm getting hot. I gotta take off.
Oh
this.
man, Pastor Dave.
Next segment, we're moving on. And what I'd like to do is wrap together. I'm hiding my anger. What I'd like to do right now is like wrap together a couple segments inside of the sermon segment because they kind of fit in. So we do want to talk about some charts and we do want to do that, but I think it's best like inside the circle of the sermon review. So 60 seconds if you can, and maybe we should set our timers. 60 seconds. What was Revelation 12 and 13 about? Go.
Revelation 12 and 13 is about the satanic trinity. The great red dragon takes center stage, and it gives us the basis for spiritual warfare. So we walk through the war of the dragon in chapter 12. We see this flashback to the first coming of Christ, and we see why the dragon is attacking us. And then in chapter 13, we see the two accomplices of the dragon, these two beasts. One deals with anti-Christian government. The other one deals with anti-Christian religion. And we talked quite a bit about how do we parse those things out from an idealist perspective, primarily, and how do we fight spiritual warfare given this reality of the unseen world in our lives. How'd I do?
I think that was good.
40 seconds.
Yeah. So from a
He goes, I think that was good.
from an interpretive standpoint, you made a decision to
I did, yes.
roll together chapters 12 and 13 together.
Yes.
Are you glad that you did it that way now post-sermon?
Well, I think they do work together. It was a challenge, though, because there was probably a couple of things people were interested in hearing more about that we couldn't get to, particularly in chapter 13. So people want to know about these beasts, and, a futurist would be interested in, like, the Antichrist stuff and the mark, and I could have talked a little bit more about this economic system in chapter 13, so we just couldn't go quite as in-depth on a couple of the issues, but I do think they work together. So
They're like teammates.
they are. They are teaming up. It's like they're in their own little war against, the real Trinity. So it's like the false Trinity, the true Trinity, fighting against each other.
Right. So in terms of interpreting Revelation, we've been giving these 4 options. Maybe there's a 5th option called eclecticism, but there's 4 options of like futurist, preterist, idealist, historicist.
Mm-hmm.
How were you approaching this particular section?
So I think we have a chart over there that you can throw up there, Tim. So if you were listening to this yesterday, primarily I went with an idealist perspective on this section, although it's open. Maybe there could be something that happens in the
Are
future.
you referring to this chart? That's the wrong graphic. Give me 1 second.
No, not that one. But if you do find the right one, you can put it up there. So that was number 14 that I had told you over there. So yeah. Now I do think some people read the book, as you mentioned, from this eclectic standpoint. There you go. So we did the preterism last week primarily. Dave did the preterism on the trumpets. I did the week before that a modified futurists, which typically sees the seals as being fulfilled throughout history, but there's this intensification at the end. The idealist is focused on the message, the cyclical nature of things that happen throughout the course of history, and that's more where I went with these messages. I think that certainly makes it feel like it's more applicable to us today. It's not something that's happening way in the future, particularly with chapter 13. Some people will put all of these things together, say this is partly preterist, partly futurist, partly idealist. And a lot of people do that with these particular chapters right here, 12 and 13, because the beginning of 12, most people agree, is a flashback to the first coming of Christ. It's not chronologically happening after chapter 11. It's just the next thing he saw, and it reminds us that Christ came for the first time. So is that what you were looking for, or are you looking for more than that? Okay,
no, that's helpful. And then sort of the theme that you were going with was this theme of lies versus truth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you told a story about a survivor of the gulags from communist Russia, and maybe people aren't that familiar with Solzhenitsyn.
So Solzhenitsyn. Now, back in 9th grade, I had to read the book One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and I think a lot of people probably are familiar with that, but he was part of the Soviet Union, he was critical of the totalitarian government, and he was exiled. So that's primarily why I chose that. And then he's got this really famous line from this address to Harvard University warning the West about the dangers of communism. And he talked about how it is a system based on lies. And so there's this really famous pithy saying that's come out of that address that's applicational. Basically, live not by lies. And part of being a Christian, part of pursuing and living in allegiance with the Lamb is to live the truth, is to proclaim the truth. And so that was the dichotomy that we set up in the sermon, because you do have this war of the dragon and his accomplices that are that are trying to put the lie out there that God doesn't love you, that God doesn't care about you, that God's not in control, and you have that opposed to the Lamb, Jesus himself, who is the embodiment of truth.
So you talked about 3 kinds of lies.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind me what those were? Personal lies. There was 2
I
other
talked
categories.
about personal lies.
What would be that? What would be an example of that?
So, maybe you're you need to confront somebody and tell them the truth, and you just choose not to do that, even though they're building their life on some kind of falsehood. And so you're contributing to a problem where, or you tell a lie. Somebody confronts you about a sin you have in your life, and you tell a little lie. You don't think it's a big deal, but in some way, shape, or form, it's concealing what's actually going on in your life, and perhaps it gets exposed later on. So that's personal lies. The second one was societal lies, and we talked. The example I briefly gave in the message was sanctity of human life. How this whole idea of reproductive freedom and how life begins later. It's a societal lie that's been impacting people. Also, the news story we did about the women's sports issue and the transgenderism. There's these societal lies that are out there that have huge implications that are causing people to live in certain ways. And then the last one was spiritual lies, and those are things I think that have crept into the church that may or may not be born out of some of these societal lies. There's a lot of progressive ideas that try to make their way in the church, and particularly they'll attack the Bible and the authority of the Bible, or the person of Jesus Christ, or the veracity of the Christian worldview. And they're these little things that start coming in that people start believing. So those were the 3 categories that I put out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be fun to just talk about why we lie. So there's
That'd be a lot of fun.
A lot of different reasons, right? So
That's good.
My wife is a licensed dental hygienist, and she always asks the patient questions like, do you floss, or things like that. And a lot of people lie to her. So she wears those special glasses, where they're very magnifying glasses, loupes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
is that what they're called? Loupes?
Yeah, loupes. And there's no fooling her. So people think that they can say something and then she can't tell if they've been having good home care, and it's like a total joke to her. She, do you brush every day? Yes. Do you floss? Like, she knows whether the person is telling the truth just by looking through the loupes and examining what's going on with the gums or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, if the gums are bleeding, there's a good chance that they're probably not flossing and taking good care of their teeth, right? Mm-hmm. So why do you think somebody would lie in a simple situation like that, like in the dentist chair? Do you floss? Yes. Like, that person's not going to...
Well, maybe they think they're going to get in trouble.
They're going to get in trouble.
Right. Or they're going to get a lecture on why they should be doing that.
Or they're going to get lectured.
And embarrassed or some shape or form.
Right. Or they're going to get embarrassed, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a good reason why we lie. All right. So I was thinking about another situation. If you get pulled over by a police officer and the officer says, were you aware of how fast you were going? Right? There's an opportunity there, right?
I've always been told you're supposed to say that you don't know why you're getting pulled over, because then that brings self-incrimination in. I don't know. Maybe as Christians we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we should be opening ourselves up to self-incrimination when we're breaking the law.
Somebody was encouraging you to not tell the truth.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that when you get pulled
right to the chase.
Yes, I've heard from people that when you get pulled over and the officer comes up to the window and says, "Are you aware of why I'm pulling you over today?" You're supposed to say no. I don't know how factual this is, because even if you do know, which you probably do, because it then self-incriminates
you.
you.
Sometimes you don't.
Yeah,
but you might.
So maybe we shouldn't be doing that.
Maybe it's actually you're following the Satanic Trinity.
Right, true. Well, and also, Noah asked the question last week about the is it ever acceptable to commit murder? I think was the Theology Sprint that we were talking about before. Now, an interesting question is it ever morally permissible to lie?
In the context of war,
could be another question.
In the context of war, it's a well-known ethical conundrum that deception is part of warfare. Mm-hmm. So, all bets are off when you are at war. Like, So there are situations where you
Yeah.
know lying is actually not just permissible but necessary for you to have the greater good. It's like a means and ends conversation.
Right.
So other reasons why we might lie is like I want to keep something private. Like you ask me a direct question and I'm not like comfortable telling you. So I'm going to sort of fudge on it
Yeah.
or whatever. Like I don't know. Your teenage daughter is talking on the phone and you go, "Hey, who are you talking to?" And she was talking to a boy and she doesn't want to tell you, right? So she may fudge just to like keep things private.
Whatever reason
or
she
confidential.
wants to keep it. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are some reasons, and I think it can be like subtly hardening. Like we can sort of callous ourselves to the reality of, hey, this isn't good to lie. I was thinking of another reason, like just being polite. Like if somebody asks you if they look nice in a certain outfit or something like that, and you don't really want to be totally candid about your opinion, so you might just
Making a judgment call, an interpretive decision.
yeah, like you're being polite about it.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy to sort of swim in the context of lies in life without really.
Well, that's a great example. So, if you're saying, like, if your wife asked you, how do I look? And, sometimes it's easier to lie. It's just easier not to say the truth.
Generally
Yeah.
speaking, I think we want to avoid living by lies. But I'm just
Yes.
sort of illustrating today how
Yeah.
subtle it is, even for
Yes.
people who are generally moral, upstanding people, to get trapped in these little lies. This is sort of separating out the people who are like chronically deceptive, who are like, living their lives in a way that's just totally immoral. We're not talking about that. I'm just saying, as Christians,
Right.
we can let these little lies creep in.
And there's little societal lies and there's little spiritual lies that can start coming into your life as well, that you need to be discerning and have a good, robust Christian worldview and know how to parse those things out.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's ask the Lord to search our hearts and have truth in the inward parts, in the secret heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, good. So we have a couple charts. One of them you made.
You wanted to get off to the chart thing. I did make this chart, and I'm hoping for a better grade than the last one that I did. So why don't you... Yeah, okay. So this was the chart that Dave made when he did his message last week, showing one way to take the...
What would you grade me on that? Like
this was...
you can be the judge.
Well, I tell you what, having modified this, it looks like you put a lot of time in, because it looks like that cross is one piece, and actually it's not. It's two pieces. You have to, there's a lot of pieces.
You made your own cross, Pastor Dave? That's incredible. I'm
How
putting
else would
your
I
book
make
in the Amazon cart now.
I don't remember
I'll
there
get-
being an option for.
I'll give you an A- on
emoji.
that chart.
Wow, that's a pretty good grade. So I didn't think they were far enough apart. That's what I was like slightly unhappy.
I see.
It
Like-
looks to me like there's the same amount of distance between the cross and the destruction of Jerusalem as there is between the destruction of Jerusalem and the future tribulation. So they didn't seem like far enough apart to me, but visually I had to do it that way for simplicity. But you modified this one, and let's see the one that Bob made. Okay, so this is your chart about idealism, and what you're saying here is, I think, maybe new to some of our people. So normally when I think of 3.5 years, you know what I think of, Bob?
You think of 3.5 years.
I think of 3.5 years exactly, like on the calendar.
Right. So the first two ones that you were talking about was taking the 3.5 years, the 42 months, 1,260 days, as being literally. So that could have been, that fits in nicely with the 66 to 70, or perhaps a literal future 3.5 years. A lot of people, though, have taken this symbolically. So that's what this is representing. 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days are half of 7. And we know that 7 is an important number within the book of Revelation. So you ask yourself, well, what does that mean? Well, 3.5 symbolically throughout the Bible is a half of 7. It's what's been called a broken 7. That's the next chart that I have there, Dave, or Tim, to represent a period of testing, a period of suffering, limited period that God allows the church to go through until he's going to bring his completion at the end. The perfect 7 coming later. Not the literal 7, but the perfection. So 3.5 is symbolic for the incomplete and then 7 is the symbol for completion. So that's how some people take that, and then they see the tribulation as being the entirety of Christ's ascension until his second coming. Like we're in the tribulation right now. It's a limited period. One day it will end, but right now we're in the wilderness, as Revelation 12 tells us. So that's a third interpretive option that people how people read the book.
I think that's new to some of our folks, but it is a legitimate interpretation of this, and a lot of reputable scholars hold that view.
Yep. So there you go. That's a different interpretation, but there it is.
I'm happy to share different interpretations just to get our people thinking. So
Yeah.
one of the things about this series is you might be frustrated by the fact that we have these different options that we're throwing at you, and you're not going to be able to come away from a sermon going, oh yeah, he explained everything to me. Now I got it. Instead, we would like to drive you back to the text and drive you to study. So if you're not willing to do that, then this sermon series would be like maybe not as enjoyable for you. If you're looking for Bob and Dave to give you like all
Right.
the answers, here you go on a silver platter, here's what you should think about Revelation, I don't think you're going to get that much out of the series that way. So I think rather we're trying
Yeah.
to help you consider, ask questions.
Yes. Yes.
And come up with your own view. But here's some options.
So there you go.
All right, good. So there's another more complicated chart that I wanted to talk about a little bit. And this is like what I call eschatological bingo. So this is like the different ways you can take the different aspects of eschatology depending upon what you are. So the first row is the amillennial row. So how would an amillennialist understand the 7 churches of Revelation? Well, an amillennialist could be a preterist, an Orthodox preterist, saying the 7 churches were in the first century, that's it. Or they could be an idealist saying these churches symbolize churches in every age. So you could go either way there. And how would an amillennialist, the next column, is approach the Great Tribulation? So this is something that we were talking about. The historicists would say this goes throughout all church history. The Orthodox preterists would say, no, the tribulation happened in 70 AD. Or the idealists would say, no, the tribulation was a symbol of the entire church age. And every age has to go through the tribulation. So that would be kind of what you were saying in the
Right.
message.
Right.
The tribulation was a symbol of the entire 3.5-year church age.
Yes.
The millennial kingdom, we haven't gotten
Well,
there.
3.5 years will be
series.
symbolic of the church age.
Yeah. The millennial kingdom, we haven't gotten there in our sermon series yet, but an idealist would say, no, this is a symbol of Christ reigning in the lives of his people. And the historicist says, again, this is the church age. And then the new creation, the futurist says, if you're Amil, you have to be a futurist with the new creation, that God will ultimately make all things right. Okay.
I think all the views see that as being in the future,
Unless you're a non-Orthodox preterist,
which is not on this chart.
Yeah,
right?
there's a view.
Yeah.
You can take the chart off for just a second, Tim. So when we're talking about Orthodox preterism, we're talking about the view that says Christ will indeed come again to judge the living and the dead, according to the Apostles' Creed. A full preterist doesn't believe that, and they don't take those historic creeds to be authoritative, and they're just like, hey, prove it, and prove it from the Bible. I want to see in the Bible. And the full preterist is doubtful that there's anything else revealed about the future in the Bible. And so we would say that's outside the boundary of Orthodox
Hence,
Christianity.
non-Orthodox.
Non-Orthodox. Yeah.
They're heterodox.
Heterodox.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So now can we go back to the chart for a second there, Tim?
Let's get back to it.
All right. So the second row.
Stop asking
These
questions.
are the post-millennialists, right? So in terms of the 7 churches, the Orthodox preterists would say these were 7 real churches. And the idealists, very similar. These are representative of every church. Okay, second column, Great Tribulation. There's 4 options here for the post-mill. So a lot of choices. The post-mill could be historicists saying, hey, no, this is the whole church age tribulation. The preterists would say, no, this happened in the first century. The idealists would say this is a symbol of the distress of every age. And the futurists would say this is going to happen later and maybe intensify towards the end. So you could be post-mill and still be kind of futuristic. Then as far as the millennial kingdom, a postmillennialist could be a historicist and say this is happening as Christ is reigning through his people, or a futurist. He's gonna reign in the future in a more golden age. And then same thing with the new creation. All right, so that's that chart. Now let's just drop the chart for just a second, Tim, and let's chat a little bit. So, are you getting the gist that no matter what view you have
the gist,
on the millennium, you still have to choose what approach you take to Revelation? So there's two decisions. You're making a decision about the millennium, and then you're also making a decision about how do you want to approach Revelation. And so on the one you have like 4 choices, and on the other you have 4 choices, and you have to like match them up together. So I think this is confusing for people.
No, but you're explaining. It's good. I'm getting it.
Okay.
I think so. What, maybe check in with Noah and Tim. Are you guys getting it, or are you guys
Is this making
confused?
any sense to you guys, or?
I'm getting it.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so let's
Okay.
go with the
All right.
second chart then, and we'll finish the exercise. All right.
Premillennial brethren.
So the third millennial option is our friends, the dispensationalists. So there's 2 options with the 7 churches. Either you can be a preterist, saying these churches really existed, or a historicist, saying this is throughout church history. As far as the tribulation, all dispensational premillennialists are futurists. So this is yet to come, right? The Antichrist, all
So
that
everything
stuff.
we've been talking about, even
Yeah.
though we've been talking in different ways, if you're dispensational premillennial, you would not see. We
Hasn't happened yet.
we haven't taught it from a dispensational premillennial view. Yeah.
Yeah. So but that's an option, and a
Yeah.
lot of people hold that
Right.
view. All right, so that's futurist. And then millennial kingdom, again, futurist. Christ will reign physically 1,000 years on earth. He's going to bring peace. We're not going to be able to do it, so we need him to come back and do that. New creation, same thing. Last row, if you're hanging in there, I know this is a hard segment here, but I think it's important. All right, so last row. If you are Bob, this is your row, man. Here's your options, man.
This is my row, man.
So if you're a historic premillennialist, as far as the 7 churches, you could be a preterist, saying these churches existed in the first century, or an idealist, saying these are all the ages. Okay. Here's your options for the Great Tribulation, Bob. You get like every choice. So this is why your view is kind of popular, because you can do whatever you want.
Or you can see certain segments as being future. You can take a bit of a modified position.
Okay.
So you might take a little bit from each on some of these.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can run the table, bro. You're like, I'll take historic premill A, historic premill B, historic premill C. So either you're a historicist, saying this is
Yes.
throughout church history. You're a preterist, saying this happened in the first century. You're an idealist, saying, hey, this kind of stuff happens in every age. Or you're a futurist, saying this is going to happen at the end, maybe with an intensification.
Yeah.
All right. And then with regards to the millennial kingdom, you're definitely futurist.
Future.
That's going to happen later. Same thing with the new creation.
Right.
All right. That's the chart. Now, I think that's interesting. So these x-axis is your view on the millennial kingdom, and then you've got a bunch of other options inside of that to decide about.
You got a sandbox to play with right there, right?
There's a sandbox. Yeah. So that's my chart for the week. I thought that was a really cool chart. I found it inside of this book, which is not a book recommendation. It's just the book that we were using in adult ed called The 4 Views of the End
Yeah,
Times.
that was
It's
wonderful. Yeah.
Straight out of that book right here. So that's where I got that chart. in
That's
case
good.
I didn't make that up. So that's the chart setting. Anything else on your sermon? We're still talking about your sermon.
Well, yeah.
In terms of like,
Maybe the last
further
thing.
thoughts while
the
we
last
wrap it
thing
up.
I thought maybe we talk about. Let's talk a little about Nero, man. Look at this. Show off this picture I found of Nero right here. This guy was crazy. Look, he's got a tiger in this picture right here. Look at that guy.
Look
that
at the
his
grip.
pet?
Look at the grip he's got on the chair. I couldn't stop thinking about this yesterday. You think that's a power move, or
is that a
at this
chair,
guy.
or is he just like holding an animal?
look
right
at the
there?
look at the grip, and you can kind of see like the veins in his. He's
just like,
gripping it
how
hard.
can I kill Christians? Right there. That's the look in his eye. So anyway, so the reason I think Nero is important, no matter what your view you're taking on this, is that Nero was the first emperor to have state-sanctioned persecution of Christians in the 60s AD. So that's why a lot of people think that Great Tribulation was 66 to 70 AD, where just really horrific stuff happened, and he just went after the Christians like no other guy. So whether you think that was the Great Tribulation in 66 to 70, something significant happened in 70 AD in that time period, and it may have been a type of things to come, or some people think that was the tribulation period. But Nero was not a good dude. Like he was, and so the number I mentioned, the mark of the beast, the 666. There's something called the gematria, which Hebrew and Greek letters all had numerical value. So if you take Nero Caesar, Caesar Nero, you put it together, you actually get the numerical value of 666. So I tend to think that's what that mark is talking about, but it's getting at the idea that if you are following the worldview of the beast, of the dragon, then you are marked as somebody who's following that system that Nero was a type of in the past. So that's what I find to be pretty fascinating about this chapter. So I don't know, what would you say about that, Dave?
I don't know what possessed Nero to do what he did, but he was the stepson of the Emperor Claudius, and he was only in his 20s when he did all this. I think he died at age 30.
Was he related to Domitian too, right? I think there was some family connection there.
I don't remember. But he was in his 20s. Like, he died young, and he was...
He was like Noah. He was like 25. Yeah, like Nero's right there.
Imagine Noah, like... just destroying Rome, blaming the Christians, throwing people to the lions. But Noah's too nice for this. Like, imagine just an out-of-control, like, adolescent boy. Like Conor McGregor or somebody, like an ultimate fighter, just like somebody without any self-control and just has serious immaturity issues. Sorry for you Ultimate Fighting fans, but I'm just trying to think of somebody that's like, you could imagine just, man, that dude is just... really, really unhinged, right? And he takes that and then he just like applies it to his way of ruling the entire world empire. That's Nero, and he was an evil man. And so 666, that was the number of his name, Nero Kaiser. There's other, as I mentioned before on a previous episode, there's other textual variants in the book of Revelation that say 616, which was the equivalent of his name, I think, in either Latin or Hebrew. I always get those confused. But one of them is like Hebrew and one of them's a Greek. One of them is Greek. So either way, points to Nero. Yeah. So this was a beast that was persecuting God's people. And certainly scary for the first century Christians.
So what do you do with that? So
who's the one who killed Peter and Paul? Nero. Yeah. So
that's
this guy made a lot of trouble for us.
Yeah. Well, what do you do with that? Maybe I'll just leave you with John offers this call. This is the call for the saints to faithful endurance. And I noticed that's actually part of your passage this upcoming week, Pastor Dave. And then he also talks about we need wisdom and endurance in any age where we're encountering persecution and challenges to our faith. And so I think that was one of the main points that John was making in this section.
Okay, I thought of one more thing I should say.
Okay.
So sometimes there's like the end times madness stuff. All right. Oh, right. And people think like the mark of the beast is something they're going to get through either a UPC barcode or like an implantable
microchip in their hand
for technological reasons.
Dare I say a vaccine?
Or a vaccine. So here's what I would say about that. Okay, so I'm not saying you shouldn't be careful with technology, and I'm not saying that it can't be used for nefarious purposes, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't protect your identity and stuff like that. That's all like wisdom you should use. But when John says this calls for wisdom, I think what he's saying is anybody who's really reading this and thinking about it can figure out what I'm talking about. 666 is referring to Nero. And that's a person that was demanding worship at that time. And you were getting his mark by participating in emperor worship. And then you got like a tangible sign of your allegiance that would allow you to buy and sell in the marketplace. And like that, they all knew they were worshiping him, and they all knew that they were going to be able to participate. So here's my point. I don't think you're going to receive the mark of the beast and not know that you've received the mark of the beast. Like, so the end times madness thing is like Christians think they're going to accidentally participate in the system of the beast. Like, oh, because I bought my cranberries and they have barcodes. Like, no, you're not gonna be worshiping the beast, like committing this terrible sin against Christ and the Lamb and not realize it. No, the point of Revelation is that these people were tempted to do so, and tempted to live by lies, and tempted to worship the beast volitionally, willfully, and give their allegiance to the beast. And I think that's why it's a sin. That's why it's a problem, because you're choosing to cowardly bow to the symbol of evil here. So there's
maybe
my caution.
time when you come up against that, and you might need to choose to faithfully endure. And actually, that's
And
where
it will be a choice, though. You're not going to like secretly like,
Right.
I'm going to just jab Bob with a little needle here. And oh man, you just gave me the mark. No. This is something
I'm gonna
Bob
sue you.
will have to choose. Like, raise your right hand. Do you choose to worship?
Yeah.
So I think
And
we need to emphasize, like, it's not end times craziness like that. You're going to make a decision to choose to give your allegiance to this power, whether you're futurist or not. It's something that you choose. You're part of this decision. That's why.
Which is where my Star Wars illustration came in right there. We shouldn't be afraid because we know that we will rise again.
Right.
So don't be afraid of Darth Vader when he comes. If he comes.
I think the moral of the story here.
My little rant for today.
That was a good rant.
I think the moral of the story here is come this Thanksgiving time, easy when you buy your cranberries for your cranberry sauce.
Will you worship the
Be
dragon
careful.
or the lamb? Where do those cranberries come from? Those the
good.
dragon's cranberries or the lamb's cranberries?
I'm not doing cranberry sauce this year. I'm scared.
It's not going to be like,
You don't know what's in that cranberry sauce, Tim.
honey, you don't realize what you just did. No.
All right.
You'll know. Okay. All right. Hey, good message. That ties right into where we're headed next week as we see now the other side, the good side, the army of the Lamb, Revelation 14 and 15. So stay tuned and keep in touch with us as we go through Revelation, the unveiling. Next up, we are going to have our routine segment every week that we call our Theology Sprint, and this is where Noah Graves gets to put us on the hot seat.
No Graves.
All right.
We almost ended this last week because he gave us too hard of a question. It was a discussion before we started filming.
This one I decided to keep in the theme of the week, and so it's very simple. What was the Reformation?
What was the Reformation? The Reformation was something that Martin Luther kicked off by nailing the 95 Theses to the Wittenberg door, where he wanted to bring about reform within the Catholic Church. There was a lot of things that were happening that he had issues with, such as the sale of indulgences and problems with how money was handled, and he brought up those issues and then brought a reinvigoration on the doctrines of grace, doctrines of justification by faith, and other things. And it caused the split from the Catholic Church to the Protestant Church. We are the protesters. And today, now we have Protestants and we have Catholics.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much a good answer. The church had become corrupt. It had been involved in the political sphere, dare I say, a little too much. And
That's true. The popes
there was a
were-
lot of financing going on. There was cathedrals to be built, and people were starting to, mix together, I think, politics and religion in a way that Martin Luther saw as a major issue. So he was a monk. He was trying to be righteous on his own and do the good works of the sacraments in order to have this infusion of righteousness, but he was never satisfied with that. So he was miserable. And despite the fact that he would go to confession and try to feel exonerated and justified, he never could. And then they assigned him as a monk to teach on the book of Romans. And when he was reading chapter 1, there's this passage in chapter 1 that says, "For the righteousness of God is revealed by faith." And it was that verse that really took him on his thought process toward, wait a minute. This righteousness is not the righteousness by which God is righteous. This is the righteousness that God is bestowing upon me as a gift by faith. It's a foreign righteousness. It's an alien righteousness. And I get to enjoy that as a gift. And once Luther saw that, the scales dropped from his eyes. He famously said, "The doors of paradise swung open and I walked through." And from there on started the Reformation. A lot of other figures joined him in his cause. John Calvin, Ulrich Zwingli, and Butzer, and others. But we trace our lineage through that Reformation. And soon the Baptists came along, and we did our part. But it's a wonderful week to remember the wonderful doctrines of grace that are recovered in the Reformation, starting in the year 1517 and beyond. So let's remember the courage. Speaking of endurance and courage, and those are themes in the book of Revelation that it
There you go.
took for the reformers to stand against the leaders of their day. And they paid a high price for those things.
And actually, a lot of people who take the historicist view of Revelation think that that was very popular in the Reformation days. People were claiming the Pope was the Antichrist, and then they claimed Martin Luther was the Antichrist, and a lot of Antichrist popping up in the Reformation days.
Right. Yeah. So that's a good question, Noah, and it's keeping with the spirit of the holiday. So.
Spirit.
Very good. Hey, thanks for watching. A couple things coming up in the life of our church this week that we wanted to highlight.
Talk to me about a pie fundraiser.
Hey, if you are interested in pies,
Who's getting hungry?
Apple pie, cheesecake, we got cherry pie, we got a lot of good things to choose from. We are in the middle of a fundraiser that will be completed right before Thanksgiving, just in time for Thanksgiving. If you'd like to support the Little Footprints Learning Center, you can do that by simply purchasing one of these wonderful pies, and it will go to support the ministry of our preschool, Little Footprints. Good. What else is going on?
What if I'm looking for a place to pray on Sunday mornings?
8 a.m.
Where should I pray, Pastor Dave?
YFMB, the new building upstairs in either 202 or 204. We have an open time of prayer. Grab a cup of coffee, pray with the ladies, pray with the men. We're covering our service in prayer as well as our country and our leaders and many other prayer needs that come up in our church body. We'd love to have you join us for 1 week, multiple weeks. Pop in when you can. The prayer room is available. What else?
I'm looking for a way that I could, give to the kingdom during this holiday season, maybe to some of those less fortunate. Is there a good way that I can do that?
Bob?
I'm sure there is. What do you... I'm not, are you talking about the city relief thing? Is that what you're getting at? Or?
No, I guess that also could have fallen in there.
I'm sure
there's like that chart. There's multiple options that I can answer that with.
Is there a hollow object that I could get somewhere that I could put things in and that would be sent to another country for a child at Christmas time that could use it?
Okay, your first question. I think you're talking about Operation Christmas Child.
Yeah.
It's one of the
Bing, bing,
one
bing,
of the
bing,
four
bing.
options that I could have gone with right there. But Operation Christmas Child, yes, you can get a box. You can fill it up with some goodies to send overseas and help those that are less fortunate. And we need you to give those boxes back by November 17th, I believe,
Yes.
in the next couple weeks. So get a box, fill it up, bring it back, and you can help those people. Or not a box, get that hollow object, fill it up, bring it back, and we'll send it over to those in need.
That is the last time I will ever do the announcements like that.
Okay. How can I help the less fortunate
For a
this
second,
week?
I thought we started playing the board game Taboo, and Tim was like describing things without actually saying things. And I want Tim.
That was
on my
worse than the
Taboo
Theology Sprint today.
I want Tim on my team for Taboo because he got
Oh,
there.
my goodness.
Very quickly. He clarified. That was good, Tim. Very good. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching
Cheers.
today. We will look forward to seeing you next time on Behind the Pulpit.